Hello, Monsters Abound here. Now, the Warhammer 3 What's Next Episode 5 video will be up now. So to be honest, if you want to go and watch that, go and watch that, because this video is going to reference stuff from that video. That's why I had to wait to release this video, because it references that video, okay? But it's not about the What's Next video, really. So go and watch that. It's got some interesting stuff in it. And then come back to this one, or watch this one first and then go to that one. Whatever you... I'm not the boss of you, okay? So if you've been paying attention, you'll know that Sail the Faithless is going to be one of the legendary lords in the upcoming Tides of Torment DLC pack, along with Drakala. I'm going to say Drakala. That might be wrong, but I'm going to say Drakala, okay? Along with Drakala, we've got Sail the Faithless. Sail the Faithless is a Norscan legendary lord, which is a little bit out there, really, if you think about it. Now, this did set off alarm bells in my head, because there was a post on Reddit just over a month ago from a user called Mysterious Attempt 6, which was about a leak. And this described the factions for the next DLC. And one of the leaks was that there was going to be a Norscan faction in the DLC pack led by Sail the Faithless. Now, at the time this leak post came out, I think it was roundly denounced as complete bollocks. And in fairness, it might still be. And also, me, Colonel Damders, and Nerd Rage Fred also discussed this on our podcast, and we also said it was bollocks for numerous reasons. I roundly thought this just couldn't be true. And yet, Sail the Faithless, a Norscan lord, like, it sounded so out there, and yet it's been confirmed. Now, Sail the Faithless isn't really a mainstream character. He showed up in the Tamarkan, the Throne of Chaos 8th edition book, and he was a side character, realistically. Not really up there. So the fact that he's being brought into the game to lead a Norscan faction is a bold, but also, well, that's a hell of a guess. If this is just a guess, if this person just made this up, that's a hell of a guess, right? Who would have guessed that? So immediately I'm thinking, well, is this true? Is this guy actually correct? Did he get this information? So I was like, okay, let's assume he's right. Okay, so he says approximately 1 month ago, CA held an in-person interview in Shanghai, China. It appears they contacted a UX research company to manage the process, but lacked security to cause several leaks regarding future DLC plans. It does seem weird to me that Creative Assembly went to Shanghai, China to do an in-person player interview. With that said, China's obviously an opening market, right? If you want to sell stuff to people, they have a huge audience to sell stuff to. If they want to sell a load more games, I guess it makes sense that they do a little bit of market research in China. However, with that said, it does seem strange, because Creative Assembly do seem, at least from my perspective, to be quite a black box of a company. It's hard to get any information out. Now, I do know some content creators and other people do have contacts within Creative Assembly, and I think this is sometimes where rumours come from, but I don't. So from my perspective, like, they're just a big black box, and occasionally I, as a content creator, get given information early on. I have not had any of this information. Currently, if you've watched that What's Up Next video, you know as much as I do, right? You are tooled into what Creative Assembly are up to as I am. I don't have any additional information. But let's assume it's true that they've done some sort of in-person player interview in China, and this information has leaked out. Now, they don't say how they came about this information, whether they were at that event, although it doesn't sound like it, but whether it was maybe second-hand or maybe third-hand information, in which case, you know, what this information is could be wrong, but they've definitely got Sail the Faithless right, which at the very least makes me interested in what else they've got to say. Now, they do say that the High Elf Sea Lord Aislinn is going to be the third of the DLC characters. Obviously, we know Drakala is going to be Slanesh character, and Sail the Faithless is going to be the Norscan faction leader. That does then tie into the Tides of Torment title, because Drakala led a faction called the Tormentors. So Tides of Torment, High Elf, Sea Lord, Norska, Sea, Tides, it all kind of ties together, right? So it'll be interesting to see if indeed Sea Lord Acelin is the third and final DLC character, because if so, the rest of this information could be true. Now, I will say that in the list of units that they think Norska will be getting, they say the Cursed Etin and Dreadmore. Now, in the What's Next Warhammer 3 video, they did talk about some of the units that Norska will be getting. Neither the Cursed Etin nor the Dreadmore were talked about. They got the Chimera and the Famir Noble. So this doesn't match up. On the other hand, if they know that this leak has come out and they want to try and, draw out the suspense a little bit longer, I guess they wouldn't mention the Cursed Etin and Dreadmore if they know this is here. Obviously, it only puts off the confirmation of the rest of this information, but it does put it off for a little bit longer. So if this information is correct, what else do they say? So they talk about the End Times DLC. They say, yes, the End Time is coming again for all fantasy lovers. CANGW will blow up the world again. I don't think this is a particular surprise. I think the End Times has been on its way since Warhammer 3 came out. It opens up a slew of new content and stuff that Creative Assembly can play around with. It just kind of makes sense. They say the DLC will be a 5-faction content pack, which will include Skaven, led by Thanquol, the Empire, led by Boris, Midland, Cathay, Nagash, and the Glotkin for Chaos. Now, I think this is interesting because all of these are characters I would say people have been waiting for, right? People want Toddy, people want Thanquol, people want Nagash, people want Glotkin, and Cathay's there too. But ultimately, this is kind of a dream team, right? And if you were going to do an End Times DLC, yes, you would want these factions involved. Midland, because of course that's where the final battle takes place for the End Times. You've got Thanquol there, he's a big player for the Skaven. You've got Nagash, big player. You've got the Glotkin, big name during the End Times. All of these characters, I mean, Cathay's there too, but they just died. All of these characters are like the dream team of a DLC. I do think that previous DLCs have been scraping the bottom of the barrel a little bit. Things like Skulltaker, I mean, people are like, great, more Khorne faction, but did anyone really go, oh, I really want Skulltaker in the game? It seems unlikely. But Thanquol certainly has his fans, right? They also say CA is testing some gameplay changes for the map in the final DLC. For example, releasing the Great Vortex will cause Ulthuan to disappear from the map. Now, how will that work? I don't know. Could it work? I mean, I can't rule anything out. With that said, I know that modding the map is very difficult, and I can't imagine doing it at runtime, how that would work. That feels like a pie in the sky thing, but I will say that Creative Assembly have some incredibly talented developers. They make this game do stuff that realistically it shouldn't be able to do. I think one of the reasons they have so much trouble with it is because they've pushed it to the limits and then beyond. If anyone can work out how to make their game make a chunk of the landmass disappear when it's not been built into the engine, I think probably the Creative Assembly developers can do it. They also say there's mention of the Avanara Sigmar, but question mark. After all, I really hope these leaks ended up to be rumours and we can have a longer roadmap with new races. Unfortunately, End Times is coming. Now, with that said, of course, all this needs to be taken with a grain of salt. Some of the other things they say are that there are 1 or 2 DLCs left between the Slanesh DLC and the End Times DLC. Beastmen will have 1 more DLC for Moonclaw, and there will be a DLC for the Monkey King with his own faction, and there's also the possibility of Tomb King DLC. I think this is all fairly fine. I mean, Moonclaw, sure, why not? DLC for the Monkey King with his own faction, I think that's slightly more out there. This is one of the things that made me go, this can't be true, because I can't imagine Creative Assembly creating an entire new faction with only 1 legendary lord. But with that said, they created Norska with 2, so could that work? I mean, maybe. There is a possibility of a Tomb King DLC is basically astronomy for Total War. There's always a possibility of anything. I don't think Creative Assembly would completely write off literally anything for DLC. We've had DLC for DLC. There's no reason why we couldn't have a Tomb King DLC. It's just a case of, can they make it interesting enough? So yeah, the possibility of Tomb King DLC, I get that, but I don't think that's particularly. There's a possibility of literally anything. So do I think the end times is the end of Warhammer 3 content? No, I don't think so. If anything, I think the end times is the beginning of end times content. I think maybe we're going to be entering maybe a section of Warhammer 3 development called the end times, where they're going to be like throwing loads of end time stuff in there, which I think is, I mean, the way that Creative Assembly seem to love the Warhammer universe, it is kid in a candy store type stuff. So I don't think Warhammer 3 content will be ending. I mean, it will eventually, of course. With that said, I did find it interesting that all three of the guys they've got talking about the new DLC are from CA Sophia. They've all worked on Pharaoh and Troy before coming in to do Warhammer 3 DLC. Now, CA Sophia are a satellite studio in Sophia, which have worked on the Troy and Pharaoh games, and they have done excellent work there. I genuinely think that Warhammer 3 DLC is in very good hands if they're working on it. If anything, I'm quite buoyed by the idea that it's in their hands. Now, that does mean that the rest of Creative Assembly are working on something. Now, it might be they're working on the end time stuff, but I mean, we haven't had a new Total War game in a while, and I suggest that there's definitely something going on. I mean, we know there's probably something going on in there. What that is, there's no concrete information on at the moment, but my guess would be maybe Medieval 3, maybe Empire 2, or 40k. I know people are going to poo-poo this idea, but I do think a Total War 40k would work really well. Creative Assembly and Games Workshop have already got a good relationship between the two of them, and I can't imagine anyone else taking on the 40k license and doing it as well as Creative Assembly have done with Warhammer. Is Warhammer 3 the perfect game? No, but it's very close to being the perfect Warhammer game, and it certainly is the best Warhammer game available. If they can do the same thing with 40k, well, they'll be rolling in money. And ultimately, that's why people make games. You'd like to think it's for us, and I think particularly like the devs probably do make games because they want to make stuff people like, but ultimately the people running these companies, the publishers, the executives, they want one thing: shit tons of cash. And Total War 40k will give them that. So I think it's more than a possibility that that is on the cards. With that said, I really would like a Medieval 3. I mean, I would really love a Medieval 3. Or alternatively, Empire 2, because I do like people lining up in spiffy uniforms taking pot shots at each other. That's just my kink. So, what do you think? Do you think this is complete and utter bollocks, or do you think there might be something in it? I guess time will tell, but until then, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.